I texted my daughter-in-law asking where we'd spend Christmas. She replied, "Oops, we forgot to tell. My name is Sheila. I'm 58 years old, and I always thought family meant everything, especially during the holidays." Last December, I texted my daughter-in-law about our Christmas plans, feeling excited about our traditional gathering. When my phone dinged with her reply, my heart stopped. "Oops, we forgot to tell you we went to Spain. Just me, your son, and your husband. Only the ones who really matter, you know." The words burned into my brain like a branding iron. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. Before I continue with my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. And if you've ever experienced family betrayal, hit that subscribe button. Sometimes knowing we're not alone makes all the difference. I've been married to Frank for 35 years. Together, we raised two wonderful children, James and Amanda. James married Allison 5 years ago, and initially, everything seemed perfect. She was charming, intelligent, and seemed genuinely interested in becoming part of our family. I went out of my way to welcome her, sharing my cherished family recipes, helping with wedding preparations, and always making sure she felt included in our traditions. Our holiday traditions were always special to us. We rotated hosting duties between homes, with everyone participating in some way. I would prepare the turkey, Frank would carve it, James would bring the wine, and Amanda would handle desserts. When Allison joined the family, she eagerly contributed her signature appetizers and holiday decorations. At least, that's how it started. Over the past couple of years, I noticed subtle changes in our family dynamics. The visits became less frequent. Phone calls got shorter. There was a growing distance I couldn't quite explain. Frank and James had always been close, but I noticed Frank and Allison developing a new bond over business interests. They would have long conversations about investments and property while I prepared meals in the kitchen. After both kids moved out, I struggled with empty nest syndrome. The holidays became even more significant to me, a precious time when our family would be whole again. Looking back, there were early warning signs that something was changing in our family dynamic. Allison would sometimes make comments about how family traditions could be stifling and how she wanted to create new memories with James. Despite these subtle shifts, I remained enthusiastic about planning for Christmas. I purchased special gifts for everyone months in advance. For Frank, I found a rare first edition of his favorite author's book. For James, I tracked down memorabilia from his college football team. For Allison, I had commissioned a custom piece of jewelry featuring her birthstone. I wanted everything to be perfect, to bring us all closer together. What I didn't realize was how quickly everything was falling apart. The family I had devoted my life to building was making plans that explicitly excluded me. The thought never even crossed my mind that they would leave me alone on Christmas. That's not what family does to each other. At least, that's what I believed. 2 weeks before Christmas, we gathered for Thanksgiving dinner at our home. I spent days preparing, making sure to include all of Allison's favorite dishes alongside our traditional family recipes. During dinner, I noticed tensions I couldn't quite identify. Frank seemed distracted, checking his phone more often than usual. James and Allison kept exchanging glances across the table, and several times I walked into rooms to find them in whispered conversations that abruptly stopped when I appeared. At one point, I overheard Allison in the hallway, speaking in a hushed but irritated tone. I'm so tired of always having to consider everyone else's feelings. When do we get to do what we want? I pretended not to hear, busying myself with dessert preparations, but the words settled like a stone in my stomach. Frank's business travel had increased in the weeks leading up to Christmas, or so he claimed. His calls became shorter, and he was secretive about his schedule. Whenever I asked about holiday plans, he would deflect, saying, "Let's figure it out closer to the date," or "Maybe we should do something different this year." I tried not to worry, but anxiety began to gnaw at me. I attempted to connect with James several times, leaving cheerful voicemails about Christmas preparations and gift ideas. My calls increasingly went to voicemail, and his responses became brief texts hours or sometimes days later. "Been busy, Mom. Talk soon." But soon never seemed to come. Despite the growing knot of worry, I continued shopping for the perfect gifts. I spent hours in stores and online seeking items that would show my love and thoughtfulness. I wrapped each present with care, using beautiful paper and hand-tied ribbons, adding personalized gift tags with messages of love. As Christmas approached, my anxiety manifested physically. I developed insomnia lying awake at night, wondering what had changed in our family. My stomach was constantly in knots, and I found myself losing interest in food, something unusual for me, especially during the holiday season, when I typically enjoyed baking and cooking. After weeks of uncertainty and vague responses from everyone, I finally sent a direct text to Allison on December 23rd. It seemed logical to ask her since she had taken on more of the family planning role in recent years. "Hi, Allison, just confirming our Christmas plans. Should we come to your place? Or would you prefer to celebrate here?" Simple, straightforward, with no hint of the desperation I was feeling. The 3 minutes I spent waiting for a response felt like 3 hours. I checked my phone repeatedly, watching the little dots appear and disappear as she typed, deleted, and typed again. What could be taking so long for such a simple question? Meanwhile, Amanda had called me the previous day, mentioning that she had tried to reach James about bringing her new boyfriend to Christmas dinner, but hadn't heard back. "Something seems off with James lately, Mom. Has he talked to you?" I had reassured her that everything was fine, despite my growing suspicions. I didn't want to worry her, but in retrospect, we could have pieced together the clues sooner if we had shared our concerns. As I waited for Allison's response, I tried to dismiss my worries as simple paranoia. Perhaps they were just busy with work and holiday preparations. Maybe there was a surprise they were planning that required secrecy. I invented countless innocent explanations, none of which prepared me for the truth. When my phone finally chimed with Allison's response, I felt a momentary relief. Finally, I would have clarity about our holiday plans. I could stop worrying and focus on preparations. I opened the message, expecting details about timing or food contributions. Instead, I read words that would forever change my understanding of my family. Oops, we forgot to tell you we went to Spain. Just me, your son, and your husband. Only the ones who really matter, you know. We needed a break from the usual boring Christmas stuff. Having so much fun. Don't wait up. There was even a smiling emoji at the end, as if this were a normal message to send to your mother-in-law 2 days before Christmas. I read the message 3 times, certain there must be some mistake or cruel joke. My hands trembled so badly, I dropped my phone. My heart raced, and tears sprang to my eyes immediately. The casual cruelty of only the ones who really matter cut deeper than any insult I'd ever received. I tried calling Frank immediately, straight to voicemail. I called James. Same result. I sent text messages to both of them. Please call me as soon as possible. No response. The silence was deafening and damning. With shaking hands, I called Amanda. When she answered, I could barely speak through my tears. They left, I managed to say. They all went to Spain without telling me. Her initial disbelief quickly turned to outrage on my behalf. She promised to drive over immediately, though she lived 2 hours away. While waiting for Amanda, I did what many people would do in the digital age. I checked social media. There they were smiling in the Spanish sunshine. Frank, James, and Allison posed in front of famous landmarks, eating at coastal restaurants, glasses of sangria raised in toasts. The photos had been posted that morning, but based on the collection of images, they had clearly been there for several days already. The final confirmation came when I logged into our joint bank account. There they were credit card charges for 3 airline tickets to Barcelona, purchased nearly 6 weeks earlier. 6 weeks during which Frank had slept beside me every night, eaten meals I prepared, and discussed Christmas preparations, all while knowing he had no intention of spending the holiday with me. Memories flooded back of hints I had missed. Frank casually asking if I would mind handling the Christmas cards alone this year. Allison's sudden interest in Spanish cuisine. James mentioning how he'd always wanted to experience Christmas in Europe. All breadcrumbs leading to this moment of betrayal. If only I had connected them. That first night alone was the hardest. Our house was fully decorated for Christmas, the tree glittering with ornaments collected over decades. Stockings hung by the fireplace, including ones for Frank, James, and Allison. The physical manifestations of a family gathering that would never happen surrounded me like mocking ghosts. The cruelest realization wasn't just that they had gone without me. It was that this was planned, calculated, and deliberately hidden. They had purchased tickets weeks ago. They had packed suitcases and slipped out while I was volunteering at the community center. They had chosen to exclude me and had been living with that decision for weeks, watching me plan and prepare for a holiday they knew I would spend alone. After a sleepless night, Frank finally called the following afternoon. His voice sounded casual, almost annoyed, as if my distress were an inconvenience. "Sheila, you're overreacting," he said. "We just needed a break this year. It's not a big deal." "Not a big deal," I repeated, my voice rising. You left your wife of 35 years alone at Christmas without even telling me. How is that not a big deal? He sighed, the sound of it traveling across oceans to pierce my heart. This is exactly why we didn't tell you. We knew you'd make it all dramatic. It's just one Christmas, Sheila. You could have made other plans if you'd known. That's when I realized this man, whom I had loved for over 3 decades, no longer recognized my humanity. To him, my feelings were an inconvenience, my pain, an overreaction. James called an hour later, his apology sounding rehearsed and hollow. "Mom, I'm sorry you're upset. We should have told you sooner. It's just that Allison really wanted this trip, and Dad was on board, and it seemed easier to just exclude me without a word." I finished for him. "You know how you get, Mom. You would have made us feel guilty." As if guilt weren't the appropriate response to abandoning your mother at Christmas. While these painful conversations unfolded, Allison continued posting photos on social media. Her latest caption read, "Best decision ever to spend Christmas with only the people who matter most. No drama, no obligations, just pure joy." Each word felt like a deliberate knife twisted in my wound. Neighbors and friends began calling or stopping by, innocently asking about our family Christmas plans. Each time I had to explain that my husband and son had gone to Spain without me. I watched their expressions shift from confusion to pity to discomfort. The humiliation was almost as painful as the abandonment. Amanda arrived that evening bringing groceries and righteous anger on my behalf. Her presence was a balm, a reminder that not all of my family had abandoned me. We sat together at the kitchen table, where we had shared countless family meals, trying to make sense of what had happened. That evening, Frank called again, this time with Amanda beside me, giving strength. I demanded real answers. The conversation quickly escalated from his placating excuses to my direct questions. "How long have you been planning this? Why would you deliberately exclude me? Do you have any idea what you've done?" Finally, the truth emerged. "It was Allison's idea initially," Frank admitted. "She said we needed to start setting boundaries with extended family." "I'm not extended family," I cried. "I'm your wife. I'm James's mother." "You know what I mean," he muttered. "Allison thought it would be good for James to have a Christmas without pressure. And you agreed with her against your own wife." His silence was answer enough. As more details emerged, I learned they had been planning this trip for months. They had discussed it during family dinners while I was in the kitchen. They had exchanged emails with "Spain Christmas" in the subject line. They had deliberately kept me in the dark, watching me plan a holiday they knew would be destroyed. With each revelation, the pain of betrayal cut deeper. This wasn't a spontaneous decision or miscommunication. This was a calculated exclusion by the people I had loved and trusted most in the world. Christmas Day arrived, and despite Amanda's kind attempts to create some holiday spirit, the weight of abandonment hung heavy in the air. We went through the motions of opening the few gifts we had for each other, but the pile of carefully wrapped presents for Frank James and Allison sat untouched beneath the tree, a physical reminder of my broken expectations. That afternoon, we received an unexpected call from Margaret Frank's sister. "Sheila, "Are you and Frank coming to New Year's dinner? I've been trying to reach him but got no response." The realization that they had excluded not just me, but other family members as well, brought a strange sort of validation. This wasn't about me being difficult or demanding as they had implied. This was about Allison systematically isolating my son and husband from our extended family network. "They're in Spain," I told Margaret, the words still painful to say aloud. "They went without telling me." Her shocked silence spoke volumes. "Without telling you? His own wife? That's not right, Sheila." By evening, I had reached a breaking point. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. The house that had once been my happy family home felt like a museum of broken promises. Every photograph, every piece of furniture we had chosen together, every corner where family memories had been made, now seemed to mock me. I called my old friend Patricia, who happened to be a therapist. After listening to my story, she said something that broke through my fog of pain. "Sheila, what you're describing isn't just thoughtlessness. It's emotional abuse. They deliberately excluded you, hid their plans, and then dismissed your legitimate feelings. That's not how loving family members treat each other." Hearing the term emotional abuse was jarring but clarifying. All my life, I had prided myself on maintaining family harmony, often at the expense of my own needs. I had interpreted Frank's increasing coldness as midlife stress and Allison's subtle digs as youthful insensitivity. I had made excuses for behavior that was, in retrospect, systematically undermining my place in my own family. "You have a choice now," Patricia continued. "You can continue to accept this treatment, or you can decide that you deserve better." That night, as I lay in the bed, I had shared with Frank, for over 3 decades, I made a decision. I would not be a victim in my own life story. I would not wait for them to return and offer weak apologies before resuming their pattern of exclusion and dismissal. The next morning, I began packing up Frank's belongings. Not everything, I wasn't ready for that level of finality, but enough to send a clear message. His favorite clothes, his personal toiletries, his bedside books. I boxed them neatly and moved them to the guest room. I called a lawyer who had been recommended by a friend who had gone through a divorce years earlier. "I don't know if I want a divorce," I explained, "but I need to understand my options." We scheduled a consultation for the following day. In the midst of this painful upheaval, I found strength in unexpected places. Old friends I had lost touch with, while focusing on my family, rallied around me when they heard what had happened. My volunteer community at the senior center expressed outrage on my behalf and invited me to join them for a post-Christmas gathering. My book club sisters showed up with food wine and unwavering support. Most surprisingly, I found strength within myself that I had forgotten existed. Before becoming Frank's wife and James and Amanda's mother, I had been Sheila Peterson, a woman with her own dreams, interests, and backbone. Somewhere along the way in my effort to be the perfect wife and mother, I had lost sight of that woman. It was time to find her again. The moment of clarity came as I was removing Frank's clothes from our closet. I held up a sweater I had given him last Christmas, which he had barely worn, and suddenly thought, I deserve better than this. I deserve to be considered. I deserve to be included. I deserve to be loved. With my newfound clarity and Amanda's support, I took decisive action. First, I called a locksmith and had the locks changed on the house. It was a symbolic act as much as a practical one, a clear statement that access to my home and my heart was no longer unconditional. Next, I visited my bank and opened a separate account transferring half of our joint savings. The bank manager looked concerned when I explained the situation. You're doing the right thing to protect yourself, she assured me. I've seen too many women left financially vulnerable in situations like this. With Amanda's help, I drafted a clear, unemotional email to Frank, James, and Allison. I did not rage or plead. Instead, I stated facts. Your decision to exclude me from Christmas without communication has forced me to reevaluate our relationships. I have changed the locks and separated our finances as a first step toward establishing the boundaries I now realize are necessary. When you return, we can discuss next steps, but things cannot and will not return to how they were before. While waiting for the inevitable fallout, I reconnected with parts of myself that had been dormant for years. I called my old college roommate Susan, whom I hadn't seen in person for over a decade, though we exchanged Christmas cards annually. When I told her what happened, she immediately invited me to visit her in Arizona. Get out of that house of memories for a while, she urged. Remember who you are outside of them. I made plans for New Year's Eve traditionally, another family gathering time that centered around my happiness rather than service to others. Amanda and I booked dinner reservations at an upscale restaurant I had always wanted to try, but Frank had dismissed as pretentious. Afterward, we would attend a concert in the park, surrounded by community rather than sitting at home waiting for a call that might never come. The support from my local community was overwhelming and healing. My neighbor, Martha, brought over homemade bread and sat with me for hours sharing stories of her own family struggles and eventual triumph. My church group organized a special gathering specifically to surround me with love during this difficult time. My book club sisters adjusted our meeting schedule to give me more opportunities for connection. Throughout these days of reclamation, Amanda remained my rock. Our relationship, always loving, but sometimes overshadowed by James's closer bond with his father, blossomed in new ways. I've always admired your strength, Mom, she told me one evening as we shared a bottle of wine. But seeing you stand up for yourself now, after what they did, that's on another level. You're showing me what self-respect really looks like. Frank returned to America 4 days after Christmas, apparently cutting the Spanish holiday short after receiving my email. His key no longer worked in our front door. I watched through the window as he stood on the porch, trying the handle repeatedly before finally ringing the doorbell. When I opened the door, his face registered shock at my calm demeanor. "What is this about Sheila?" he demanded. "You've changed the locks, taken money. Have you lost your mind?" "Actually, Frank," I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. I've found my mind and my spine. The guest room is prepared for you. We can discuss arrangements tomorrow when I return from my lawyer consultation. James called in a panic that same evening. Mom, what's going on? Dad says you've thrown him out and are talking about divorce. I haven't decided about divorce yet, I told him truthfully. But I have decided I won't be treated as an afterthought in my own family. What you three did wasn't just thoughtless, James. It was cruel. And the fact that none of you can see, that tells me we have bigger problems than just one ruined Christmas. As expected, Allison's response was the most hostile. A stream of angry text messages accused me of manipulating everyone with guilt trips and punishing them for taking one vacation. I chose not to respond to these attacks, a silence that I found empowering after years of attempting to placate her subtle hostility. The path forward wasn't clear yet, but for the first time in years, I felt in control of my own life. Whatever happened next, the decision would be mine. 6 months have passed since that devastating Christmas text message. So much has changed in my life, much of it painful, but necessary. The divorce proceedings are underway, a decision I came to gradually, but with certainty, after Frank refused to acknowledge the damage done or take responsibility for his role in it. I've created new traditions with Amanda's family. Her boyfriend Mark, now her fiancé, has been wonderfully supportive, including me in their lives in meaningful ways. Last month, they asked if I would help them house hunt, valuing my opinion and explicitly stating they wanted to find a place with a nice guest room for Mom to visit whenever she wants. I've also rekindled old friendships that had faded during my marriage. My trip to visit Susan in Arizona led to a monthly virtual book club with our old college friends, women who knew me before I was a wife and mother, who remind me of the ambitious, confident young woman I once was and am becoming again. Frank has made several attempts at reconciliation, but each has revealed his fundamental inability to understand the depth of the betrayal. I said I was sorry about Spain, he complained during one discussion. Why can't you just move on? He still doesn't grasp that the issue wasn't just the trip, but the willful exclusion, the weeks of deception, and the casual cruelty of the revelation. James has been on a different journey. After the initial shock and defensive stance, he's slowly begun to recognize his role in hurting me. Last month, he asked to meet for lunch alone without Allison. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, he said, his eyes finally meeting mine with genuine remorse. I got caught between Allison's wishes and what I knew was right. I should have stood up to both her and Dad. I'm truly sorry, Mom. It was the first apology that felt real, that acknowledged the actual harm rather than just regret at being caught or facing consequences. We're rebuilding slowly, our relationship forever changed, but not destroyed. Allison remains hostile, though her power to hurt me has diminished significantly. She continues to write nasty comments on social media, thinly veiled references to toxic in-laws and freedom from family obligation. I've blocked her accounts and asked James not to relay her comments. Her feelings about me are her business, I told him. but I get to choose what energy I allow in my life now. Therapy has been essential in processing this family rupture. My therapist helped me recognize patterns of emotional neglect that had been present in my marriage for years before the Spain incident brought everything to a crisis point. The Christmas betrayal didn't create the problems, she explained. It just revealed what was already there. Perhaps surprisingly, I've found joy in my rediscovered independence. I've painted the living room a color Frank always vetoed. I've taken cooking classes to prepare meals that please my palate rather than accommodating everyone else's preferences. I've converted James's old room into a home office where I've started freelance editing work, tapping into skills from my pre-motherhood career. I've also found purpose in helping other women navigate similar situations. I joined a support group for women going through midlife divorces, and the shared wisdom there has been invaluable. Recently, I started volunteering with a community program that helps women establish financial independence after relationship breakups. The most painful but necessary lesson I've learned is about self-worth. For too long, I measured my value by how well I served others, particularly my family. I believed that self-sacrifice was the highest form of love. Now, I understand that healthy love requires mutual respect and consideration. By allowing myself to be continually diminished, I wasn't modeling healthy relationships for my children or creating genuine intimacy with my husband. I've learned the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. I can forgive the hurt caused largely for my own peace of mind without inviting the same people to hurt me again. I can wish them well without needing them in my daily life. I can love them from a distance that protects my well-being. Today, I find myself at peace with the knowledge that sometimes the family you choose brings more love than the family you were given. My circle now includes people who celebrate my presence, rather than treating it as an obligation or an afterthought. There's a special freedom in realizing that you can walk away from relationships that diminish you, even when those relationships are with people you've loved for decades. The woman who received that devastating text message 6 months ago wouldn't recognize me now. She was broken, bewildered, trapped in patterns of pleasing others at her own expense. The woman I am today stands tall in her own power, creating a life built on self-respect and genuine connection. If you're watching this and recognizing similar patterns in your own relationships, remember, you deserve to be considered. You deserve to be included. You deserve to be loved. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself and ultimately for others is to stand firmly in that truth, whatever the consequences. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more journeys of healing and self-discovery. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message of empowerment, share this video with them. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that it's never too late to reclaim your worth and create the life you deserve.